Good morning, everyone. We have now just hit 11 a.m. So we're going to start the investor briefing while a few more people are logging on. We've got people from all over the world coming in today. My name's Alfred, and I am part of the investor relations team at Novatti. I'll be hosting today's quarterly results briefing. We're joined by Novatti CEO Peter Cook, who will provide a brief presentation on the results, and then he'll open up the floor to questions from investors and analysts. Through the presentation, if you do have any questions, please type them into your Q&A box. If you're on a computer, your Q&A button is on the left-hand side of your screen. If you're on a smart device, it'll be at the bottom of your screen. As many of you will be aware, Novatti has reported a fresh quarterly sales record, so I won't take up any more of Peter's time. Peter, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Alfred, and good morning all, and good afternoon or good evening to a few. Look, it's great to be able to do this presentation, and in a numbers sense, first time we've gone through $5 million of revenue for a quarter. What I will do is very quickly start off with a repeat of a couple of slides we've put up before, which sets out our background and our positioning and strategy, and then we can talk about the results. So in a positioning sense, we want to enable businesses to pay and be paid. And that really, for us, a business is either another fintech or a bank or a payments company, or it's more like a traditional merchant or business who's not in the financial services industry. So in a customer-based sense, at the moment, about half of our customers are other sorts of financial institutions, payment companies, banks, and about half of our customers are direct merchants or businesses. And we've got business development going into both of those market segments. In a business overview sense, we provide multiple payment services. We are a multi-services payment service provider. And by that, we're in the areas of issuing, acquiring, cross-border processing, cross-border payments, settlements, that sort of business, and subscription billing services, where we really automate a lot of processes that occur in many sorts of businesses, leading to payment functions that go with those automation services. And then I'll say separately, and in that dotted box there, we are progressing on our banking license, which in the end will become its own sort of business in the long term, largely separated, other than a straight shareholding from Novatti. And just reminding on strategy, we really start with a philosophy of licenses that we are both in Australia and overseas trying to build a library of licenses, and to really it takes time, but that really is the foundation for us to be a compliant, serious, sustainable player in the movement of money and payments. On top of that, we've got a range of technology solutions. We continue to build all of our own technologies, and in some cases we insource technologies. For instance, we've done a deal with another listed company called Identity, where we're using some of their services to improve our compliance and reporting to, in that case, Austrac. And then the real value comes out of driving very serious commercial relationships, and whether it be with companies such as Visa or Apple Pay or Union Pay or whomever, or other some of the Chinese companies such as Alipay and WeChat Pay in the wallets, Ripple, that we've done integrations with them for both now Thailand and the Philippines. So really serious tier one partnerships as much as we can to enable us to leverage the licenses and technology so we can deploy really serious services. So build this ecosystem. The ecosystem really is a conjunction of licenses, technology, these sorts of commercial partnerships. Then we can monetize that for either other payments companies or other businesses. Just looking at our results in the September quarter. Sales revenue, $5.3 million. In the June quarter, we did 4.9, but if you look at the September quarter from last year, we were at about 3.56 million. So on straight sales revenue growth of 49%. Actually, our total revenue for the quarter was actually about $5.7 million, which includes some government grants and so forth. But we really just focus on true sales revenue as how we measure ourselves. And then within the sales revenue, if you look at our processing type revenue, so from issuing, acquiring, cross-border payments, settlements, subscription billing, we've grown that against the same quarter from last year at a tick over 100%. So we've essentially doubled it. And that's really where we're trying to drive the growth in the business. So you could sort of say, well, why is the total sales revenue at a slower growth rate than the processing revenue? And it's because we've got some underlying elements of our business, primarily to do with technology sales, that are necessarily reasonably consistent from year to year. And so you could sort of argue our overall sales growth rate is slightly slowed down because of that. But if you look at where the real focus is inside the business on processing revenues, we've grown that at 100% over the last 12-month period. We did a fundraising of $40 million in early July. What did we do with that money, and how does that allow us to drive growth? So about half of that, a little bit over half of that fundraising went on acquiring the 19.9% stake in Reckon. We are in really good conversations with Reckon about being able to work with them to get our payment services out to their customers. And that is a really good example of the aim of leveraging our payments ecosystem to be able to get it out to that 100-odd thousand customers that Reckon serves. And assuming that we can bring that through over time, we've got a really good addressable market for our services. And that should actually help Novatti grow its revenues. And in fact, if we can bring it through properly, it will also actually help Reckon drive their revenues. We've been able to launch new services. And so over the last 3 months, we've really operationalized and started onboarding customers in our acquiring business. We are live and generating revenue out of acquiring. We've been able to launch our B2B cross-border payment service, and we've launched and we're in a soft launch phase of a service in Europe where under a brand name of Verve, we are launching some banking services that go on top of other people's licenses. So if you look at it in the last 90-ish days, or let's say the September quarter plus October, we've been able to bring through 3 new service offerings. We extended with Ripple. We'd previously worked with them to get transactions happening into the Philippines. We got Thailand launched with a partner bank of Ripple's, and now ours in Thailand in the quarter. And then at the same time, we've been able to complete the fundraising for the Series A for our the banking license, and then really announce post the quarter. But we've been able to gain agreement with ATX in Malaysia for an acquisition, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And on acquisitions, we do have a really good pipeline of acquisitions underway. So in terms of the fundraising, it's about growth, the investment into Reckon and gaining growth there, and then just driving growth in the business. And the most obvious output of that is that you're seeing the revenue growth quarter on quarter. In terms of ATX, really good fintech company out of Malaysia. Novatti, we've actually worked with them for about 6 years, and they've got some of our wallet technology underneath a large part of their business. Their revenue is circa $3 million at the moment, and on a normalised basis with about $600,000 of profit. We're looking for very strong growth from them post our investment. The primary business that they've got at the moment, or the origins of their business, is servicing about 30,000 small retailers in Malaysia, where the original business was about topping up mobile phones, then bill payments, then putting money into remittance wallets. And now they've also launched a number of online businesses, marketplace services, and servicing a lot of these retailers with some online services. So I think from Novatti's point of view, great addition, gives us geographic extension into Southeast Asia, supports some of the work we're doing with Ripple. We'll be able to get some further technologies and services of ours through them. Jointly, as an example, we can then extend, say, our issuing or acquiring licenses into Malaysia. And meanwhile, we hope to be able to get an e-money issuing license in Malaysia. And so really, if you look at it in terms of an overall strategy thing, continues to extend our ecosystem, gives us a really good launch pad out of Southeast Asia from a profitable business. So, and really just repeating those value propositions on the ground in Southeast Asia, really strong team there that we've worked with for a number of years. Earnings accretive, so really good valuation for us, and actually is profitable. And as an overall thing, I mean, you know, all acquisitions have risk in them, and in particular cross-border ones. We know the management team really well. We've looked at the company for a long time, and now we can bring it through when they're in a profitable position, and we can help them accelerate their growth. In terms of outlook for the business, we continue to drive a strategy of increasing our footprint, increasing our revenue, and absolutely at a proof point of driving top line revenue growth. And you know, we've been able to show that quarter on quarter, and you know, look forward, all things being equal, to hopefully being able to show that for the remaining quarters of this year. We've got a very strong balance sheet at the moment, circa $20 million at the end of September. In terms of driving the business further, extending into new markets, bringing through the bank license, bringing through acquiring licenses, driving extension of the Ripple business into new markets, completing the ATEX acquisition, as we've said before, looking at further acquisitions, and then really working with Reckon on bringing through payment services to their customers. So summarising again, really strong revenue growth, bringing through these other licenses and works that will continue to give a step function growth into the future. Alfred, over to you for questions.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that really good update. Great to see so much happening. Peter, we've got over 100 people online already, so there's quite a few questions that have come through. If anyone does have questions, please type them into your Q&A box and we'll just work through them. If anyone's asking the same question as someone else, we'll just merge them into one question. Peter, first one comes from Robert. Is Novatti expected to benefit from borders reopening in Australia?
So interesting, actually. I'm going to say net a little bit, but we've been able to grow nearly irrespective of it, because our merchant acquiring is at the moment not based on in-store merchant acquiring. So in terms of servicing the international students, we've been able to get really strong growth out of, in particular, our China payments business unit. Anyway, so just on that, as a revenue line, that has essentially grown about 200% over the last 12+ month period. we now have, if you just look at that as a small business unit, we've been able to get very strong growth, even though in that case the Chinese students and many many tourists aren't in Australia. That is the business unit that would grow if borders were magically open. But for the rest of what we're doing, we're getting growth irrespective of that.
Thank you, Peter. We've got a few people that are asking about the merchant acquiring business. Kai and Greg both asking, is the acquiring business operating without the licenses?
Yeah, so I think we might have, I'll say, slightly confused people in the past. We are running a merchant acquiring business right now. So Kian Jackson, who heads that, we've got a full team. And we are onboarding many customers right now, and some of them are of very, very significant size. Where the licenses fit in is, so we're operating as what's called an aggregator or payment facilitator at the moment. Where the licenses come in is that will allow us to be called a merchant acquirer, and then in our modelling sense, that brings in deeper margins later this financial year. And it will also allow us to offer out services to other financial intermediaries or payments companies as an ecosystem player. So right at the moment, it actually makes no difference to what we're doing. We are full steam ahead on bringing on customers.
Thanks, Peter. Got a few people asking about the bank. Ken, Eric, James, combined question. When will the restricted banking license be approved? What's holding it up? And what are your expectations?
Yeah, so we've said to the market, our aim and hope is end of November. We really are in the hands of APRA as a regulator. So it's sort of one of those things that's, we can't control the absolute destiny. We are absolutely, hopefully, fully pregnant with being able to get it. We think we've done everything that's required, and we are hopefully working through the regulator is working through the last steps. So we are fully hopeful that we have the license by the end of November, but it's not something we can control to the absolute nth degree.
Peter, following that, Benjamin has asked, what are your steps in case the license is not permitted?
Well, Benjamin, we don't think that that'll be the case. That would be, well, I'd sort of hope in my own mind that's a 1%er. But the timing, if it's, it might be December, not November, or January. I mean, that's a different issue, timing, but not getting it is not something that's in our thinking.
Thanks, Peter. Question from Chris. What percentage of the neobank has Novatti retained? What further dilution is expected before it is commercially viable?
So at the moment, Novatti, if we had the license issued tomorrow, we would be about a 70% shareholder. And then what will happen is over the following, hopefully 6 to 9 months, we would aim to get our full license, and the bank would do a Series B fundraising, which would probably dilute Novatti down to maybe 50% or something. That would go to exact pricing. And then, maybe over the following 1 or 2 years, there would be further dilution. And as a long-term aim, the bank at some point, it has to run its own capital sort of management plan, and that may lead to an IPO in particular would be one obvious thing. And Novatti at some point will be a major but strategic shareholder, and Novatti will run its payments business, and the bank will run its banking business. And on a arm's length commercial basis, they would work with each other.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to move on to questions relating to your other business divisions. Question from Christian. Can you comment on the momentum of immersion in the US? And secondly, part of that question, any comment on uptake for a Ripple in Thailand?
So for immersion in the US, We've recently brought on a VP of sales, and she is now sort of further extending out the team. We've got an engineering support person. We've got another salesperson, and we are starting to, really drive the business, build channels, and bring on customers at the moment. So you would still say it's early stages, but and we're doing a little bit of product tuning. We're aiming to release you'd call it a sort of slightly cut down, simpler version of the product in early January. But really it is the mega market. We are aiming for much bigger customers than we would typically get in Australia. And, it's early days on a very large work in progress, but one that will ultimately be very successful. And then just on Thailand, we've launched with one of Thailand's major banks, and that is bringing through good revenues in terms of cross-border payments, pretty much from the get-go.
Thanks, Peter. Just going to stay in that part of the world. Raj is asking, is Southeast Asia a priority market going forward? And Christian is adding, will you look to scale Runs at Hero with ATX over there?
If I can sort of start back on geographic extension. So right at the moment, we've got about a dozen people in Europe. Most are in Cyprus. We've got a sales and compliance team there. We've also got a couple of salespeople in Belgrade, and we've got three other compliance people in one in Israel, one in London, and one in Greece. So if I start with Europe, we have a very serious investment in Europe, and we are building significant revenues out of Europe at the moment. The Southeast Asia, and I'll call it a risk managed way of getting into Southeast Asia and being properly represented there. ATX provides that, and we've got a really good management team there. We will build them out so that they can drive some of their business units, such as Runs at Hero. But what it also does is have us much closer to other markets if we want to extend some of our services into those other markets. So what I would say is that you're seeing that we have a view that to be a super, large company, we need to succeed in Australia, get our licenses, build our revenues and business models, but also be able to succeed globally. And essentially that will be a super driver for the long-term value of the business. And just coming back to Southeast Asia and also North Asia, the business plan for the bank is really around what we'd call borderless banking and migrant services banking, and really to be able to have physical, an office presence in Malaysia as an example, and we'll have presence in India and China, either virtually or real offices there. That's what's going to drive a lot of the customers for the bank in the long term.
Peter Kai is asking, is Novatti still in talks with Afterpay about expanding into other countries? And Aaron is adding, do you see any future BNPL opportunities?
So if I start with Afterpay, we would hope that as they extend into other countries and where we can get suitably licensed for an issuing license to support them in time, then I think we've shown to them that we're a great partner, and hopefully we would be a first choice for them. But again, that's that's in their heads as well. Sorry, there was a second part of that, Alfred.
Do you foresee any other BNPL opportunities?
Okay. Yeah, so we have an investment essentially an equity investment in a small BNPL company in the UK ourselves, and we are doing a lot to support them and get that split pay and get growth there. And then we're actually in a client situation. We have a technology client and also we're doing about to do some acquiring services for them. But we've got a BNPL client in Australia who specialises in the real estate space. You know, in that case, providing BNPL for the marketing costs for when you sell a house, or for landlords when they're getting repairs done. So we've got those two exposures at the moment. I suggest as a strategy thing, or not even as a practical thing, we can very quickly work with ATX to drive some BNPL services through their network, and in that case, there's two sort of opportunities in Malaysia that we could think about. One is BNPL for consumers, a bit like we think about Afterpay here, but the more immediate opportunity is given their network of retailers, is that actually we provide a B2B BNPL service to enable their retailers to essentially fund purchases from companies, I don't know, their supplier companies, Nestle or people like that they're buying goods from, that we can help with a cash flow funding service. But again, that's in the realms of possibilities and things that we've got to bring through.
Thanks, Peter. Nick's asking, do you have plans for a crypto trading or exchange business?
I'd say at the moment not. No.
Very good.
And maybe if I can go back to that, look, we at the moment are not, we're not crypto specialists like that. We want to make money from, as an example, on-ramping, money going into crypto, money coming out of crypto, money moving around. But I'd say right at the moment, we are not geared up to be an exchange to directly. That's why I sort of answered that question as no. But do we want to make, and are we making money out of crypto? Yes, but really as a payments company.
Thanks, Peter. Questions from James and Richard. Will Novatti receive a dividend from its Reckon investment, and what co-offered services are you looking at?
Right. So in fact, I've had a couple of people write to me because our quarterly results didn't show a dividend from Reckon. So it's interesting. People obviously read that pretty well. So we got a dividend from Reckon of about, I think it was 675,000, and it's sort of a little bit to do with COVID, but we actually did not receive that until early October. So anyway, we've now, it goes in future, we'll receive it electronically. But anyway, we banked that in early October, so that'll appear in this coming quarter's cash flow. And then based on past behaviour, if Reckon declare another dividend of about 2 cents a share in, I think, late January and pay in February, then there's about another $400,000 or $500,000 we would pick up then. So it's an interesting thing. Just if you look at the investment in Reckon, which we're really happy about, is plus or minus on past performance of their dividends. There's about $1 million a year of dividends to us. But the bigger thing is to work commercially with them. And, we see that there is a number of services that we can tightly integrate, and really bring benefits through for their customers. And if you think of, a customer of theirs might be a tradesman or some company providing personal or professional type or trade services. If we can do services that improve the productivity of that company, so they're not spending 2 hours a night chasing up debtors, things like that, then we're really improving the customers of that company, of that accounting services company, and of course driving payments revenues for ourselves.
Thanks, Peter. We've still got quite a few questions and we're running tight on time. A question from Kai: how will Verve compete with other banks in Europe?
So it's what we're doing, Kai, is we're essentially providing access to some banking services. And so as an example, I don't know, if you had a business and you needed bank accounts in Europe right now, that is a slow, difficult process. So what we've done is essentially built a service offering using lots of other payment companies and their licenses. So we are in fact using other parts of ecosystems, you might say, but we've built some services so that we can provide very specific services so that companies that primarily are outside of Europe can get banking services inside Europe. So it's in some ways it's a light touch service, and it's a bit of a toe in the water service. And you know, we long term will have an e-money issuing license in Europe, and then we'll be able to bring some of those services onto our own license. But at the moment, we're leveraging other people's licenses to provide, I'd call it, those light touch banking services.
Peter, I'm going to merge a couple of financial questions together. Brett's asking, how do you feel about the cash flow situation? Obviously, you're focused on growth, but is there any plans to get cash flow positive sooner rather than later? And we've also got another one about the debt situation.
The debt, well, there's no debt in the business. So there's no debt in the business. We did have a convertible note that was in the business, and that had been slowly paid back during last year, and at the end of finished at the end of July. In terms of, I think the question was about cash flow positive. So if I start with board strategy, we are absolutely focused on growing the top line of the business, and we are funded to do that. Now, what we see is that probably the quarter just passed, and this quarter will be sort of, let's call it peak negative cash at maybe $3.5 million. And then the aim is to tighten that up over the following quarters, which will largely come from growth in revenues and margin. So we are not looking at, you know, we think that that's fully sustainable and affordable within our balance sheet at the moment.
Thanks, Peter. We've just got a few more questions, but I'm going to skip the ones about the banking license, which you've already addressed. We will get back to everyone via email after the call, which is being recorded, by the way. I'm just going to get through this one. Question from Trevor. How would you describe Novatti's M&A focus in terms of license portfolio building and extending partnerships? Is the focus more at acquiring technology or processing revenues?
So just trying to pick up on that. One thing we're not trying to do is buy technology. We're in the sense that if we buy a fintech business, we expect that it will probably have tech within it, but we're not buying a tech business. We're buying operating revenues and operating services businesses with customers. So that's an extreme focus. And then I've sort of said in the past that we want to extend the ecosystem, which would go to licenses. So if you look at, so just going back to say the Malaysian business, right at the moment that they are bidding for some licenses, we will help them do that, and we would hope to get licenses in Malaysia. Now, in a slightly different circumstance, they might have had a license, but we're not buying straight technology businesses. We want customers or revenue or licenses or geographic extension. So does that sort of answer the question?
Yep. Peter, just one last question from Mark. Will the delay in securing the Visa and MasterCard license have a knock-on impact to the bank ADI timing with people tied up sorting out Visa and MasterCard, or are they separate items?
Okay. So they're really really different teams for a start. So the bank team has essentially got nothing to do with the work being done on acquiring license. So just on the acquiring licenses, like we've been, let's call it, tacitly approved. We're in sort of setup and testing phases, and really that's a work in progress where the revenues we expect from that is later this financial year. That are directly, or the margins directly related to the acquiring license. As I say, we are driving an acquiring business right now. So there's no change. The license work is just being done in parallel before we deploy the final acquiring switch. So yeah, no, really different teams. And so bank license, nothing to do with acquiring licenses. Acquiring licenses really at the moment, nothing to do with revenue, actually. It's just an additional piece of work.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. We are now getting very tight on time. So if there are any more questions, anyone in attendance can email them in by replying to your webcast invite, and we'll get a direct response from Peter via email. And if there are any left in the queue, we'll also respond by email to those that have submitted those. As mentioned, a recording of this webcast will be made available in the coming days.
Thank you to everyone for dialing in. And we've got a really strong supportive shareholder base. We do talk to a lot of our shareholders pretty frequently in all sorts of different ways. And in fact, we've got a lot of consistency in the holding of our shares and a lot of really good supporters. So thank you everyone for dialing in. Thank you for questions. And, I think I've got a really good team and we're building that, and we look forward to sort of driving more growth and positive outcomes for our shareholders. And I guess in this sort of same forum, I'll see everyone again at the end of the end of January, and then the half year presentation at the end of February. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone for coming in and listening and questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. On behalf of all the shareholders and those in attendance, we thank you for your time and look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thanks all. Thank you. Bye. Bye.